Hey, this is Ayal with Atlanta Against Cancer. Welcome, everybody. Woo. So this is thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is our second year hosting the event here at Ponce City Market. And Atlanta Against Cancer, we bring creativity, culture, and community with a focus on cancer in the city of Atlanta. We have a week long of programming, from live podcasting to arts activities and everything from vendors markets to art shows. Today, we're with the Larry Campbell, President and CEO of Corners Outreach. Larry, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the great work you're doing to defeat cancer.
Thank you. So to start off with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got to Atlanta, and kind of just your story from there?
Yeah. I grew up in Nashville and went to work for the 7th largest company in the world and worked all the way to corporate America in Danbury, Connecticut. When I got to corporate America, I recognized that I was much more of a hands-on, and I moved to Atlanta in 1986. I'd been here for a long time period, and I built a consulting company to really focus on analytics and how we could help executives make better decisions, leveraging my experience from Union Carbide. After our kids got grown, we have 3 kids and 7 grandkids, and after they got grown and went away to college, my wife and I began to think about how can we make the community better? And it was through that effort that Corners Outreach was birthed.
And so just that it's said in, perfectly rather than for me, like, what is Corners Outreach and what does Corners Outreach do?
Yeah, and I think, it's like there's always this layer of complexity, but in the simple world, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about beloved community. And really, I think we have the opportunity in Atlanta to be a beloved community where all different people can still belong. And belonging is such a critical word. I love the word of belonging because it means I'm family. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to accomplish with that. So Corners really works hard to build relationships because all things work through relationships. So it's about belonging and then having relationship and then having purpose. We talk a lot about purpose, and we want to help our students through our academy have a better academic life and therefore be able to do different jobs. In the meantime, we want to create stability for the home life through the parents by giving them better jobs.
Okay. So, and Corners Outreach is something you had always planned on doing? Was that pivot from like business to I don't know. I mean, nonprofit is a business in so many ways, but like that pivot from business to like this form of service work, was that was just always the trajectory, or
no?
Like since you were a kid, was that your mind is like, that's what I'm doing?
No, I think I grew up in an era that basically talked a great deal about if you have resource and opportunity, then you have responsibility. So my basic view is it's always made sense that as I got to certain parts of my life, and that's why when our kids went away to college, we had more time. And so we really never intended for even Corners Outreach today it's every year we focus on what's the needs of the families. And so all of our solutions are built on their needs, and with the Lord's help and all the multiple people that support us, we build all the time on their needs and how people support. And in all honesty, it's way bigger and way deeper and doing more things than I would have thought when we started. But I feel like the need is there, and so we found that need, and we feel like we can make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, and for the audience to know, is that they let me come in. I toured the facility, and I'm born and raised in Atlanta, and you've been here longer than I've been here in Atlanta, oddly enough. And so, I mean, even being at Ponce and seeing Ponce, and if you moved here in '86, then this place itself has changed enough to talk about the word development. But I got to go to Corners Outreach, and it was such an experience to see what felt like the most full circle. It's funny to call it Corners because it's like the nooks and crannies are all covered. It was so detail oriented towards providing what the kids need for the kids, what the parents need for the parents, and then what they need together. And I think you can kind of see that. So, and I know there's 2 big programs that represent. So those are the Corners Academy and Corners Industries. Will you walk us through just a little bit of that?
Yeah, and one of the things I think a lot is Heschel said, the key is to know what you see. And too often we see what we know. So we predetermine what the answer is, but what really the experience of life is to know what we see, and we do that through listening sessions. So we always bring our families in and sit at round tables and just say, hey, how can we help you have a better life? And even though that seems very trite, by listening to them and then by doing what they tell us, they feel empowered. It creates that particular view. And so we look at it from the point of view of the students. The academic world is very structured. But if you walk into that world and let's say that your parents only finished 6th grade because of the country they grew up in, or they speak a different language, or they don't have real familiarity with technology, especially during COVID, what happens is the kid really winds up with not having other resources. So most of us grew up in a family where when we came home from school, our parents helped us do our homework. But imagine a world when the kids come home from school and all the homework is in English, but the parents don't read English that well. Now all of a sudden the student stands by themselves. So what we wanted to do is to create, we began kind of talking about homework club, and then we kind of moved
Homework
to academy.
club.
Yeah, and we kind of want to go back to this
Homework
scenario.
club, that's a fun,
Being in a club where you do homework is kind of a laughable thing, but our kids, and this is another thing, by listening to our students and building their confidence, because so often if you're without resources, you begin to believe that you cannot. But what happens is when you have people around you that says, yes, you can, and we structure academy so that our children can find success, with success, they actually find more success. And so what we say all the time is, you're bilingual, you have a superpower. So you're very bright.
I mean, so true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a thing totally, and working in the community that you guys work in, that's got to be one of the biggest barriers for especially adult success. Like for children, it's sometimes I guess it's easy to forget that like in America, like all kids have access to education.
Yeah.
It's different levels certainly, and different like qualities of schools, and we can go into textbooks and all the budgeting and all those things, but there is educational things out there. But when you're a parent, when you're spending 10 plus hours of your day working, maybe more, kids, like you're saying, like you might not have that basic education that the competing working world. And as a parent, not that you're competing with other parents, but you're also learning, if another parent is doing this, I want to do it too.
Yes.
But I don't know how, I don't know who to ask. A big thing we've talked about too is like not just knowing how to ask in the form of what to say, but people don't often grow up if they aren't motivated to ask questions, motivated to ask for help.
Yeah.
They don't just all of a sudden ask for help. That's not a part of it.
Right. And I think we've created a scenario where we're supposed to do things by ourselves, but in all honesty, none of us can. We need a team of people. We have a great team at Corners that works on things. Part of what we really focus on too is, so this is a simple statement, but we use asset-based community development. So we work with our parents to say, what are your assets? So in 2017, we did all of our surveys. The number one asset that came back from our dads was lawn care. So I'm running a consulting practice business. I go to the board and say, let's start a lawn care business. And when the laughter quit, they're like, you're serious? I said, yeah, they have that skill. We now have paid out the last 2 years over $1 million in wages to our parents, not just dads, but dads and moms who work there, because we created the business. We went to the community and said, how would you like to have great lawn service and give 10% of every dollar back to tutoring, creating a self-funding nonprofit?
Right.
Now all of a sudden, the person getting their yard mowed is also changing the future. It's a winning kind of strategy.
And it's so interesting because, and for everyone who doesn't know or didn't realize when he talked about it, that like you were in supply chain management. And me and Larry, for some reason, actually, I had 1.5 years of supply chain management experience. It's on my resume. And but one thing you learn is inventories. And inventories are huge, which is assets.
Yeah.
What you keep, what you throw out, what's working, what isn't. And what's so interesting, and I think it actually speaks a lot to your supply chain management background, which is that like again, I said it already, it's full circle. You've self-sustaining programs that actually can increase. Because I know you've talked about it with me, but it's definitely something to mention is you pay more than a fair wage to your employees. You're the charity, I don't know if you can even call them employees or how that works. Like those aspects I think are so important because, and definitely like my job is here to tilt it towards cancer and medicine and all those things, but I always tell people I'm not the most knowledgeable one, so I'm definitely not a doctor. But like when I think about a child getting cancer, can't explain to his parents. When I think about an adult getting cancer, can't explain to a doctor. You know, those are real difficulties. And from the outside perspective in, what I see with coroners is that you're not really just providing, even with lawn care, you're not just providing jobs, but community, somewhere to go, somewhere to be, somewhere to go and say to somebody in the middle of a conversation, I'm sort of going through something. Can I tell you about it?
Yes.
And that trickle down effect of somehow we get help. I mean, that's the cornerstone of so many foundational communities in history.
Yeah. Well, it's back to that belonging. If you have come to a country and you don't feel like you're a part of that, then you create little pockets. So we bought a community center, and part of our whole concept was mi casa, su casa. This is yours. So we want you to create what's best for you. Now we can have book clubs or women's clubs, or people can come there, they can read, they can get coffee. We're going to put a soccer field in. Our whole concept is
That's
let's
right.
make
Congratulations
this a fun,
on that. Like,
it's phenomenal, really. A fun place, because really with children especially, it can't just be schooling. It's got to be, let's have fun.
Right.
And I think that's a critical aspect. With parents, it's like, how can they contribute? So part of the beauty gets into is, since 2018, we've constantly thought about how do we pull our parents in. So a good example is we have 9 15-passenger vans. Moms drive our vans. So we train our moms, we let them drive who cleans our building? Moms cleans our building. So every time we think of something, we're like, hey, let's pull our population in and say, would you like this job? And so it gave them a way to augment their income and still be part of their children's lives in those situations.
It's amazing. And each one of those that you're talking about, they're paid wages.
Yes.
So
all paid,
and that goes so far, because the reality is that, like, even in talking about cancer, so much of the conversation between patients and, you know, as I look out in the audience, like, we've all have these stories, like, if you don't have the money, you don't even go to set the appointment to find out how much it is.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, if you get a phone call, if you make a call to a hospital and the wait period is too long, I'll push that till tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week, next month. The issue, you know, it manifests, it gets bigger. And I think that I can tell you about my own story where, you know, I was able to reach out to parents and some friends and like Facebook, and then people from my past are commenting back and giving suggestions or getting messages directly that say, like, my cousin's an oncologist, or all these things. And I think that's so much of, like, you know, because really we can talk about all the details of coroners and all the details of Atlanta Against Cancer, but what we were really talking about is community.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful too. It's like what you're sharing also is, once I have something, I have a need, then basically what happens is I begin to aggregate other people who either have resources or experience or have compassion. So if you think about it and you just switch that out from cancer and you said, let's talk about immigration, let's talk about being born in another country, let's talk about poverty. You know, one of the beautiful things is that so often there's lack of awareness. You know, we think about is we could have the best medicine in our medicine cabinet, but if I don't know how to use it, I don't know what to do with it, we're never going to solve the problem. There are so many resources that we grow up with that we just assume everyone has. We laugh about it is our teenagers learn to drive cars with our cars because their parents don't have cars. So, you know, you think about the whole concept. A teenager wants to drive, and we're like, you got to get ready for your driver's test. They can take the book learning. We're like, you got to be ready to drive. He's like, how do I do that?
If your parents don't have cars, if your friends don't have cars, how do you learn to drive a car?
Yeah. So I love what you're saying is that part of this central theme is, and it's the beauty of Atlanta. I mean, I want to say this 1,000 times, but every person has a beautiful part. I mean, we're all made in the image of God. We are beautiful people, and together we're beautiful. we're more beautiful when we're better together. That's one of our expressions. But if you never tell people that, if you never pull them and make them feel that they're important, that they can be successful, what happens is they isolate. They begin to believe, I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, I'm not really worth it. That's not what we all intended. And so by finding community where you can actually say, I could use some help with reading, or I could use a better job, or I may need transportation, or I might need translation. I mean, think about all the times that our children are translating for our parents. Sometimes the children shouldn't know what the parents are going through. Now we have a whole community that walks out life with them through a friendship model.
And I mean, and so many of those kids, I mean, when I was there, you look at what's the average age of the child that you see at Corners?
Yeah, it's crazy because we're very fortunate. We begin with almost 6 months old all the way through 18-year-olds. So we really
6 months old?
Actually, there's a whole concept that says that I begin to build my baby's brains at let's say before 6 months, but they're building it early because we want to get them to 1 million words of vocabulary. And so we teach the moms how we can actually talk about the vocabulary, what we're doing. Increasing their vocabulary early will increase their trajectory later.
How much of how much can you correlate the success of a person that persons that goes to Corners, not necessarily because of Corners, but to just their vocabulary and their education to their success?
Yeah, I really think it's both and. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good, please.
No, it's both and because part of it gets into what I said earlier about confidence. When I believe I can, I will be able to do other things, and I can fail okay. That's one of the problems it gets into is if I'm really going to reach out and try things I can't do, I need to learn to fail properly. You got to create a structure that failure can occur. But we know that third grade reading level, you learn to read so you can read to learn. The stories are that third grade reading level not only predicts graduation rate, but it predicts prison size. Think about that. At 9 years old, you can predict if someone's going to be in prison. Another stat that haunts us is only 4% of children in poverty in Atlanta will escape poverty. Only 4%.
Only 4% of children in poverty in Atlanta will escape poverty. And for context, because you're well more educated on this than I am, when you say poverty, what do you mean? It's
200% below the actual level of income for your family size.
200%?
You're 200% below it. So if the poverty level was, say,
you realize
30,
how bad I am at math? That's really not fair.
So let's say the poverty level is 30,000 because it's a man, wife, and 2 kids.
Right.
Okay, 200% below that is 24,000. So these people are making below 24,000. And so those kids are in that view. They're stuck there unless we intervene. Mm-hmm. That's our job.
When we say 24,000, that's pre-taxed?
Yeah.
See,
yes.
That's what I mean. But and then you have the cost of living plus the hardships that we've talked about, from language barriers to information community and all those things. I think one of the notes that I have, because I'm willing to admit that I'm looking down, is Corners outreach exists to break cycles of generational poverty and strengthen our community. Is there a sentence or a few sentences, or how are you going to do that? How do you do that? How do you break cycles of generational poverty?
Yeah, part of it is, we believe that change really occurs best if you work 2 generations. So we go back to, we talked about academic model for today. It's help the student be better, build their confidence level. While we're doing that, let's create stability at home by increasing their income level. So now that we're changing both of those at the same time, and then we set with both the parent and the children and talk about whole family focus, like we do whole family index. So hey, who came to the food giveaway? Who served at the food giveaway? Mm-hmm. So we're also asking them to volunteer because it's their community.
What's so interesting about that though is you said whole family focus or whole family index. Was it index or focus? Index. Okay, index. And I got to be honest with you. Are you talking about family counseling? Because but what's funny is when you say index, I'm like, we're making moves forward in life. That's what I'm doing an inventory. I'm doing an index. But it's funny because in my mind, it popped up I know that as family counseling. But what's so different is that what you're really talking about is in breaking that cycle, we have to not just talk about the problems, but we have to run checks. What have we been doing, not just what have we been saying? Is that kind of
and that's part of what I tell people all along is from 3-year-old, for the rest of the time at Corners, we're doing assessments. So we're benchmarking, how are you doing this year? How are you doing next year? All the way up to our parents. We're benchmarking English. We're benchmarking certification. So constantly we're building individual services plans for each person. So the ideal scenario is the 3-year-old, the 9-year-old, the 15-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 36-year-old, each have an individual plan. Collectively as a family, we go back and say, how many of you are participating? And what you said earlier is really true. In many cases, our dads had 3 jobs: day job, night job, weekend job. Now, how can we expect a dad who's working 3 jobs to come to a training class? So we have to be thinking about, hey, what schedule would fit you? And how do we make that work? How about if we came to your apartment complex? How about if we did it on Saturday morning or Sunday night? So we work for them, and by working for them and working individually, kind of using best practices per individual, and then collectively looking at the whole family, and then going back, again, don't lose this word about relationship. Because anytime you're going to go through change management, the real question is, do you trust the person you're with? And that's, you know that in cancer. It's like, who do you trust, your doctor, your nurse, people that walk out life with you? So part of this whole collection of things is, while we're making these changes, are we also connecting with that person?
One of the most interesting things that I think you said earlier about privilege, and that we talked about this on our very first conversation when we met, which was, my belief was that privilege is being able to have a fallback. It's pretty simple. If you have a fallback, that privilege in itself can mean the world.
Yes.
Not everyone has the opportunity for a plan B, and one of the things I think is so interesting about you were successful in business. I hope you see how successful you are.
Very much true.
Whatever, this is non-business.
Yeah.
But where do you see, I don't know if the right question is to ask, where do you see that the community has failed the community? Or do you see, why is there such a need for these individual organizations like Corners to step in? Where is the gap?
Yeah, I think, and I want to say this is very critical, is that every personal story is someone's story. So we look at Corners, we're working with 1,500 families and 4,500 members. So what we are doing is we're listening to those 4,500 members individually and trying to make sure that they're heard, they have a voice, we know what's going on with them. One of the things that happens is that, and you can watch this more and more through life, we separate. We separate in private schools. We separate in different neighborhoods. We have gated communities. We belong to blah, blah, blah. What happens is the more we separate, the more we tend to be left with those who look like us, think like us. America was built on people who did not look like us, think like us. And so one of the beautiful, I love sports. I mean, I say this all the time. In sports, you're looking for the guy or the girl who can hit the ball the farthest or score the most points.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kick
so
hard.
Sports pulls you together. That's how life should be. Life is a sport that if we pull together in a team environment, we can leverage each other for the better good. We can look at our talent and figure those things out. So part of what I would simply say is, and there's that belonging of enjoyment. I really can't, this is probably the thing I would say is, people always ask me is how do you keep up with 1,500 families? Because our staff they're dedicated to doing that.
Right.
So we tell those stories because we live with them, we experience life with them, and to their credit, they allow us to be in their life, to have that experience.
So I want to ask, and it could be personal, so if you don't want, I've only known you a short period of time. You've only known me a short period of time, even though you watched us set up today, which tells you a lot about where we're at and how we're going. But and it's a 2-part question, I guess. How do you not be angry? And I'm not saying this because maybe you put on for me, which I promise no one, I couldn't imagine why, but I think about the work you do, and and working in cancer for just the 2 years now, year and change really, we lose friends. We have stories of recovery that turn into stories of cancer again. We have stories of success with the asterisks. But, in the world that you work in as well, how do you not, I don't want to say get deterred because I think that's too low of a question.
Yeah.
I think I can Like, how are you not angry? Like, where's the, are there times where like we don't see the Larry who like slams his fist on the table and,
Well,
how like, you know.
yeah, I work very, very hard. Well, I guess it is a complex question.
Yeah, go for it.
One I would say is because I believe in God and I believe He's all powerful, and my job is not to wonder why, but it's to be obedience to His will. And so when I don't understand it, my prayer is that I'll be a faithful servant.
Okay.
But part of it gets into is it's very critical that the greatest thing I can do is help someone find better solutions. And so in that particular view, I'm in love with the problem, but not the solution. So therefore, I think when we get angry or we get overwhelmed, it's about us. It never needs to be about me. It needs to be about the families we're working with. Now, having been involved in multiple deportations or multiple occurrences at detention centers and go there and watch how human beings are treated, I generally get very angry there. And I have written congressmen, vice presidents, presidents, senators. I have gone and spoken on behalf of people that don't have a voice because I think we're better than that. I think we as a country are better than that if we really understood what's going on there. So my anger is about our systems, and then I think our lack of compassion, because in all honesty, we need each other. We truly do. It's what's worthwhile in that situation. What I try to recognize is that there's also goodness, and sometimes people don't know what they don't know. So just like my families don't know how to navigate poverty, sometimes our good people don't know how to navigate immigration. So I want to be a voice for helping them understand it better. To do that, I can't be angry. I really need to be thinking about their goodness.
Well, it's so interesting that, and I'm going to make you have to keep us on schedule for Larry's a busy man. All right, okay.
Perfect.
Busy man, But what's so interesting is like you can ask any cancer patient this, and if I feel like, I think you could ask any cancer patient this, but like, we do receive surveys, sort of. We get like an email or like, I don't know, you get surveys in really weird ways as cancer patients. They survey you in just strange ways.
No, wow.
I can tell you that, and one of our two sponsors, and I need to say the sponsors at the beginning of this. That's thanks for reminding me. Piedmont Cancer Institute, where I did my chemo at and did my entire process. The reason I chose Piedmont Cancer Institute was because when I was making phone calls, as I got told, I was told you have cancer on a Friday, so I couldn't do anything till Monday. Wow. So on the whole time, I'm like researching and going through this process of educating myself as if that was going to, like somehow I was walking in the doctor's office and going to be like, look, from what I understand, we need to, but I chose Piedmont because the scheduler, who is that's kind of like what the front desk attendant, I guess the name is, that is really used as scheduler. It was like, okay, hold on, let me help you with this. Let me help you with this. I could just communicate to that person. Yeah. I didn't choose them because of the doctors or the great facilities or any of the wonderful things they actually do that they have all the advertisements for and they put their budget towards. Because, and I'll shout out, her name was Kelly. And in my phone, when Piedmont Cancer Institute calls, it just says Kelly. Wow. And I have to remember, I pick up the phone. It's never, she's not, but it's, just that level of connection made me feel like I could be comfortable there.
Yeah.
And, what I was originally asking about bringing up the survey thing is because it sounds to me like the biggest part of what you do is listen. That your day is spent 99% listening, and then because of that, I imagine your team gives you their 99% equally, because that the 1% feels so heard.
Yeah.
And that it sounds to me like, and I'll cut off after this, the survey thing with the cancer is very impersonal. Mm-hmm. It's such, cancer is one of these things where we give it this umbrella term. We all have different, I'm looking at all these cancer patient friends that I know in the crowd, and we all have different stories.
Yeah.
But I know we can all relate on these surveys somehow. Mm-hmm. So, you doing these surveys, you spending so much time listening to people, how much of that is foundational to the success to yesterday, today, tomorrow?
Yeah, I can't oversay this, but I'll say it very importantly, is it's amazing. So I spoke at a leadership conference where the people in the conference were, 130 of successful leaders. So everyone in that room is successful. I spoke there, and at the end on question and answer, a young black lady raised her hand, and I said yes, and she started crying. And I was like, did I say something to offend you? She said, no, you see me. Now, think about that. And I was like, you're highly successful. You wouldn't be in this room if you
She's
weren't
already,
successful.
yeah, okay.
You're already proven it. You're successful.
Yeah, she's one of the leaders.
And she said, until today, I didn't realize I had a voice. We need to recognize so many wonderful people have great stories and great voices, and we need to slow down, sit with them, look them in the eye, make them feel like they're the king or queen or they're empowered, and then we need to turn our resources to help them have a better life. And if we do that, we all benefit from it. And it can be done. I mean, we have so much resources. We have so much knowledge. We have so many opportunities. If we look at each other and we see each other, truly see each other, it can truly happen. And I'm blessed to say that I get to spend my days doing worthwhile things with people that don't look like me, don't talk like me. We make fun of each other. My Spanish is poquito, very poor, but we spend time loving and laughing and experiencing life, and they tell me very, very detailed stories in ways that I'm always kind of in awe of, but then I'm very, very big about praying. I'm very, very big about honoring, and very, very big about then creating our staff and our resources to work directly for them, and that creates a better outcome. And as they see that, they tell their friends about it. And I think that's the wonderful thing Corners gets to do.
I think we have to end there, not because of timing, but that that is I will say that was the most clear and concise answer to the question of how do you break generational poverty? How do we break these cycles? And in short, just seeing each other. And I loved what you said, slowing down.
Yeah.
That's been so much of, I think that's what Atlanta Against Cancer is about, what Bebop has been about, is slowing down, individualizing it, because it already is.
Yeah.
And I got to say that was, taking a little bit aback. That was really well said. And it's kind of crazy to think that at this point you're not fluent in Spanish. So, but I get it too. I've got to imagine your Spanish is better than most of the people I know. So,
well, I want to go back. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah. Thank you for what you're doing to raise awareness. And hopefully in this podcast, go to our website, cornersoutreach.org. We have great opportunities. We have great opportunities for you to hire. I mean, many times people come to me and say, I really need a bilingual receptionist. Like, I got one. I mean, I got people that can help you. And if we put people to work, we all benefit from it. So go look at it. Come volunteer with us. Come see the beautiful children and families we work with. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Larry.
It's great.
Yeah.